A free maid. That's why our house is always spotless. My daughter-in-law's voice echoed through the wedding hall, syrupy sweet, but laced with poison. The whole room gasped, but the sound that shattered my heart was the applause from my son. My son, whom I gave birth to with every ounce of pain, was standing there in a tailored suit bought with the overtime pay of his mother, laughing along with the insult. I'm Martha, the woman with hands as rough as tree bark from soaking in cold Clorox for 15 years as a hospital janitor. I chose to live in a damp storage room, eating dry ham sandwiches, just to give them the warm home they live in now. And this is what my sacrifice is worth. Being called the maid? The answer is no. I stepped onto that stage, not as some small-town mother-in-law, but as the creditor of their lives. I grabbed the mic, and with just one sentence, I tore down the polished facade of this so-called prestigious family. Want to know the true cost of betrayal? Keep watching, because the real show is just beginning. I was seated at table 12, right by the staff walkway. The kitchen doors kept swinging open behind me, blasting cold air mixed with the smell of steamed shrimp and dish soap at my neck. In sharp contrast, the main table gleamed like a golden stage. My son Matt and his bride Ashley sat beneath the crystal chandelier, glowing like the king and queen of the night. I smoothed out my dress and forced a smile at the woman sitting across from me. She was a distant relative of the bride's side, her neck draped in oversized pearls. The snow in Aspen's been awful this year, she said casually, touching up her lipstick without sparing me a single glance. I nodded, about to respond, but she turned away, already chatting about first-class flight prices with someone else. Just like that, I was invisible again. At this extravagant wedding in the Plaza Hotel, I was nothing more than a speck of dust that had landed in their perfect plan. A light tap on a champagne glass rang out. Ashley's father, Mr. Harrison, stood to give a speech. He raised his glass, his tuxedo stretched tight over his round belly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "today I proudly welcome Matt into the Harrison business empire. A perfect union of legacy and talent." He went on and on about million-dollar real estate projects and 3 generations of entrepreneurs. For 15 straight minutes, not once did he mention my name. Not a single word of thanks for the mother who gave birth to the groom. As if Matt had raised himself, or had sprung fully formed from their corporate dynasty. I sat silently, my hand clutching the napkin, swallowing down the ache in my chest. Then it was Ashley's turn. My daughter-in-law rose to her feet. Her Vera Wang gown hugged her slim figure, shimmering with each breath she took. She held the mic, her eyes scanning the crowd before locking onto the dark corner where I sat. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom." Ashley cooed. "And of course," she paused, her voice dipping into a soft, intimate tone laced with thorns, "a special thanks to Mother Martha. Because of her, our home has been spotless these past 6 months. It's truly a blessing to have a free maid right in the house. Am I right, everyone?" She winked at her bridesmaids. A few giggles broke out, sharp, tacky, and mean. I froze. The blood in my veins turned to ice. She had just called me the help in front of over 300 high society guests. The air around table 12 thickened. Curious, awkward, and mocking glances started to land on me one by one. I looked at Matt. My son. The boy I had given my whole life to raise. I waited for something, some kind of protest, a frown, or at least a guilty glance. But no. The worst thing happened. Matt leaned his head back and laughed. A full, hearty laugh. Effortless. He laughed right along with his mother's humiliation. Then he raised his hands. He clapped. Slowly, loudly, deliberately, one beat at a time. His applause was the spark that lit up the crowd. Mr. Harrison patted his son-in-law proudly. Mrs. Harrison covered her mouth, giggling with disdain. The whole room joined in, turning Ashley's insult into the punchline of a wildly successful joke. I sat there, alone in the middle of that storm of mockery. I waited for the tears, but strangely, none came. My eyes stayed dry. Inside my chest, something broke, not the soft heart of a mother, but something deeper. Snap. It wasn't the sound of despair, it was the snap of the last chain. The end of my pathetic endurance, of blind motherly love. Everything died in that single moment. I placed the napkin on the table, neatly. I gripped the edge of the table, and pushed myself up. The screech of metal chair legs dragging against marble echoed across the room like fingernails on a chalkboard. Every laugh stopped, every clap died out. Even the string quartet froze mid-song. Over 300 people fell into dead silence. Wine glasses hovered mid-air. All eyes turned toward the woman in the cheap dress at table 12. I didn't bow my head anymore. I stood tall. The back that had been bent from 15 years of scrubbing hospital floors was now straight as steel. I stepped away from the table. I started walking, not toward the exit to run, but toward the stage. My heels clicked against the cold marble floor, sharp and steady in the grave-like silence. I didn't look at the distant relatives with their jaws hanging open. I didn't look at Mr. and Mrs. Harrison frowning in discomfort. My eyes locked onto the two figures standing up on that platform. Their faces still held traces of smug victory, but now they were starting to twist with disbelief. Matt looked at me, his hands, those same hands that had clapped at his mother's shame, now hanging useless at his sides. I walked up the steps. Every step felt like a hammer shattering the old version of myself. The distance closed. I stood face to face with them under the blinding lights. "Mom," Matt said, his voice slightly trembling, "what are you doing?" I didn't answer. My response wasn't in words. The time for words was long gone. The spotlight on the stage hit me directly, scorching hot. That blinding beam cut me off from the rest of the world, drowning everything around me in thick darkness. In that moment of silence, I didn't look at Matt. I didn't look at Ashley either. I lowered my head and looked at my hands hanging loosely by my sides. Under the harsh light, every flaw on those hands showed clearly, raw and rough. They were ugly hands. Thick calluses in my palms, the result of 30 years of slicing, scrubbing, and scouring. The skin was dry and cracked. Light brown age spots had begun to speckle the back of my bony hands. Bulging blue veins ran like dry rivers down my arms. But to me, they weren't just wrinkles. Every scar, every callus was a chapter in the story of my life. The memories flooded in, vivid like a slow-motion reel. I saw myself standing in the cramped kitchen of a 24/7 Denny's off the highway. The smell of burnt grease, onions, and cigarette smoke clung to my hair and clothes no matter how many times I washed them. These hands were kneading dough. Not dough for customers. They were long gone, and my 12-hour shift was over. But I stayed behind, legs numb, finishing a batch of cornbread. It was Matt's favorite. I had baked millions of those little loaves in a tiny rented kitchen after every night shift, just so Matt would have a hot, proper breakfast before school. I remembered a rainy night in November. Wind howled through the window cracks. That was the day John, my husband, died in a scaffolding collapse at the construction site. Matt was only 10. He wore an oversized black suit someone had lent us, standing small and stiff next to me in the church. His little hand clung to mine, cold and trembling. I knelt before the statue of Christ, rain and tears running down my face, whispering a vow, "Give me strength. I swear I'll never let him suffer. I'll carry John's share too." And I kept that promise. These hands soaked in buckets of icy water laced with bleach at the City General Hospital. 15 years working the night shift as a janitor. On winter nights, the cold soaked into my bones, swelling my finger joints until I could barely hold a soup spoon. But I never missed a single shift. Every extra hour, every tiny tip, I saved in a special account labeled Matt's College Fund. I wanted him to walk onto that campus with his head held high, not crushed under student debt like the rest. The memories shifted. The dazzling light of graduation day. I saw myself again, older, maybe, but smiling brighter than ever. My hands were trembling as I pinned a white orchid boutonniere to Matt's suit jacket. That Armani suit. I bought it with every cent of the bonus I earned, pulling double shifts all through Christmas and New Year's. While people gathered around fireplaces, I was scrubbing vomit and trash in the ER. But seeing Matt up there, on stage, confident and accomplished, made every callus on my hands feel worth it. Then, the memory of that day flashed through my mind. The day Matt brought Ashley home for the first time. Golden sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. A beautiful blonde girl in a soft floral summer dress walked into my house like a fresh breeze. In her hands was a basket of homemade blueberry muffins. "Hi, I'm Ashley," she said, then quickly corrected herself, her voice sweet as honey. "Oh, can I call you Mom Martha?" She said my rosemary roast chicken was the best meal she'd ever had. She sat on the couch for hours, flipping through Matt's childhood photo albums, giggling at pictures of him running naked in the rain. She took my hand, her soft, manicured fingers wrapping around my rough ones, and told me how much she loved Matt. Back then, I foolishly thought I was the luckiest mother in the world. I believed I hadn't just raised a successful son, I'd gained a devoted daughter too. I was wrong. So wrong. My thoughts drifted to the rundown shed behind the garden, the place I was now living, like an unwanted guest. There, on the damp wooden wall, hung an old apron. A fifth wedding anniversary gift from John. A denim blue apron, now faded and stained with bleach, the pocket seams frayed and singed from stove sparks. That apron was my shield. It had protected me through grease, grime, and the grind of life while I raised the man standing before me now. And then, I looked at what stood in front of me. Ashley, dazzling in a white silk wedding gown covered in Swarovski crystals, worth tens of thousands of dollars. Paid for with my sweat, paid for with the last pieces of heirloom jewelry my mother left me. The apron of the home builder, and the dress of the home wrecker. I stepped up to the final stair of the stage. I was now face to face with them. One last memory cut through, sharp and fresh like a new wound. John's deep voice during the hardest days, when we shared a single loaf of bread. "Martha, we may be poor, but we've got our pride. I'll never let you or our son bow to anyone." My mind slipped again, this time to an afternoon 6 months ago. Matt and Ashley stood at my doorstep, surrounded by a sea of cardboard boxes. Matt threw his arms around me, his smile as bright as morning sunshine. "Mom," he said excitedly, "we're moving in. This way we'll save on rent for the wedding, and we'll be here to take care of you as you get older." Ashley stood behind him, shyly smiling, handing me an expensive bottle of Cabernet. "A little gift for you, Mom," she said. At the time, I naively believed it was the beginning of a happy, united life. I had no idea I was opening the door to invaders. The very next day, the changes started. Ashley brought home a giant air purifier, humming loudly, and placed it right in the middle of the living room. When I asked about it, she answered, without looking up from her phone, "I just want the air to be fresher, that's all. Sometimes old houses have this particular smell, like old people and rotting wood." A week later, Ashley took me out to the backyard and pointed to the garden shed sitting alone by the fence. "Mama Martha," she began, her voice sugary sweet like she was talking to a toddler, "we have so much stuff, clothes, shoes, storage, and your room is the only one that's still empty and big enough. Maybe you could move out here for a while?" I was stunned. The shed? It would be super private, she kept going, painting this rosy picture. "You'd have your own space to read, listen to the radio, and you wouldn't be bothered by our noise. Matt can install a heater for you." Matt, standing next to her, nodded eagerly, backing her up. "Yeah, Mom. Just temporary, okay? The house is really cramped." And just like that, I moved out of the master bedroom. The room with the window overlooking the rose garden that my husband, John, planted for me 30 years ago. Now, it's a giant walk-in closet filled with Louis Vuitton purses, Jimmy Choo shoes, and Ashley's designer outfits. As for me, I moved into the shed, with a single dim ceiling light and a tiny space heater Matt rushed to buy from Walmart. My presence in the house I owned slowly started disappearing, replaced by little yellow sticky notes. They popped up everywhere like warning signs. On the fridge, Ashley drew a thick black line across the middle shelf. On the top half, where she kept her organic almond milk, imported French cheese, and celery juice, was a note. "Ashley and Matt's stuff. Please don't touch." The lower half, where I kept my regular milk and margarine, was left blank. No names, no ownership. On the brand new washer and dryer they brought in, a full-size sheet of paper was taped right on top in bold print. "For delicate clothes only. Do not mix with items that smell like cheap fabric softener." The rules tightened day by day. In the living room, Ashley placed a set of fancy marble coasters on the coffee table. One time, I absent-mindedly set my glass of water directly on the wooden surface without using one. Instantly, like a ghost, Ashley appeared. She didn't say a word, she just let out a loud sigh. Then she grabbed a cloth, wiped the water ring clean, and moved my glass onto the cold marble coaster. Her eyes shot me a look full of annoyance, like I was an untrained animal. All I could do was bow my head and apologize. Apologize. In my own home. But the breaking point came one Saturday afternoon. It was a chilly day. I decided to cook a pot of beef stew, a traditional family dish, the kind Matt grew up eating. I simmered the beef until it was tender, added carrots, potatoes, celery, and onions. The rich aroma of spices and warmth filled the kitchen, drifting out into the living room. I smiled, thinking tonight we might all sit down together, and maybe, just maybe, A hot bowl of stew could thaw the cold tension between us. Click! The front door opened. Ashley was home from work. She froze right there on the doormat. She scrunched up her nose dramatically, waving her hand in front of her face like she was trying to ward off evil spirits. "Oh my God," she blurted out. "What is that awful smell? It's like some cheap diner or something." My heart sank. "It's beef stew, Ashley. I made it for dinner." She didn't reply. She marched straight into the kitchen, her heels clacking loudly against the floor. She stared at the gently bubbling pot on the stove with a look of disgust in her eyes. "Mother Martha," she said coldly, "how many times have I told you? I don't want my work clothes reeking of these strong, overpowering food smells." Before I could say anything, Ashley grabbed the oven mitts. She lifted the entire pot of steaming stew. "Ashley, what are you doing?" I asked, alarmed. She didn't say a word. She walked straight to the back door that led to the yard. She opened it. And to my shock, she tilted the pot. The whole pot of stew I had lovingly prepared spilled onto the grass. Beef, potatoes, the thick sauce, it all splattered across the cold green lawn, steaming into the winter air. I stood frozen. My hand gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, trembling. Ashley returned. She slammed the now empty pot into the sink. The clanging of metal was sharp and jarring. She took off the mitts, looked me straight in the eyes, and said calm and cruel, "Mother Martha, we're trying to elevate the image of this home for your husband's guests. Please stop cooking these rustic-smelling meals. If you're hungry, you can have a sandwich." She turned and walked upstairs, leaving me standing there alone in the kitchen that now smelled not like comfort, but like garbage. I looked out the window. Sparrows and blackbirds had begun pecking at the chunks of beef stew that were meant for my son. I didn't cry. I just felt something rise and choke in my throat. This house, every brick has my name on it. And yet somehow, I've become an unwelcome guest in my own home. A freeloader who has to watch her step just to breathe. Before I go on with the story, I want to ask something from the heart. Is anyone listening to this right now, living in a house where you have to walk on eggshells around your daughter-in-law? Anyone who eats in silence, swallows tears with every spoonful, just to avoid upsetting the children you spent your whole life raising? If so, leave a single dot in the comments. We are not alone, and it's time we start sharing our truth. After the soup pot incident, I knew I no longer had the right to step into the laundry room. In the cold storage room, I pulled out an old red plastic basin. I had to wash everything by hand. The water from the garden hose outside was freezing cold, seeping straight into my bones. I used the cheapest detergent I could find at the corner store, the kind with harsh chemicals that made my skin start to react. After just a few days, my already rough hands began to turn red and crack. It felt like thousands of needles stabbing into my flesh every time I touched water. That night, I waited until Ashley was in the shower. I tiptoed into the living room where Matt was sitting, watching TV with a beer in his hand. "Matt," I whispered. I held out my swollen, red, bleeding hands in front of him. "Look at my hands. The chemicals are burning my skin. Can you ask Ashley if I can use the washing machine? I promise I'll only do laundry in the middle of the night. No one will even know." Matt glanced at my hands. Just for a second, then he immediately looked away like he had just seen something disgusting. He sighed, the kind of sigh people make when they're putting up with something ridiculous. "Oh, come on, Mom." He brushed it off. "Don't be petty. Ashley is super sensitive to weird chemical smells. She's already really stressed about the wedding. Can't you be more understanding? If you just deal with it for a little while, the house can stay peaceful." I pulled my hands back and hid them behind me. That's when it hit me. In my son's eyes, my physical pain didn't matter as much as his wife's so-called sensitivity. The peace he was talking about was built on my silence and my blood. A few weeks later, I stood quietly in the kitchen, listening to them talk with the wedding planner. I had given Matt my entire retirement savings, over $40,000. Money I had saved from 30 years of hard work, and from selling the heirloom jewelry my mother left me. I gave them everything, thinking that was a mother's love. But now, they were talking about imported peonies and $1,000 French champagne like money just fell from the sky. I gathered all my courage and stepped out, gently suggesting that the roses blooming in the garden could be used to save a bit on decorations. Ashley stopped mid-sentence and looked at me with pure disdain. "Mom, this is our wedding of the century, not some backyard tea party for retired old ladies." I looked at Matt. He didn't look at me, he just kept his head down, staring at the menu. His silence was the cruelest answer. He let his wife humiliate his mother right in the home she had built. But the moment that truly broke me came on a Friday night. Matt sneaked out to meet me in the storage room. He looked around nervously, like he was afraid of getting caught, then shoved 2 crumpled $20 bills into my hand. "Mom," he whispered, voice trembling with cowardice. "My in-laws are coming over for dinner tonight to discuss something important. The atmosphere's going to be a little formal. Maybe you can take this money and go enjoy a nice meal out somewhere? Come back around 10. He was trying to pay me to disappear. He didn't want me around, because to him, an old woman with cracked, bleeding hands was an embarrassment in front of his rich in-laws. I didn't say a word. I took the 2 bills, put on my coat, and walked out of the house. That night, I didn't go to any restaurant. I drove to an empty park and sat on a cold stone bench under a dim streetlight. I pulled out a dry ham sandwich I bought at a convenience store and started chewing. The night wind slipped through my hair, freezing cold. The dry bread stuck to the roof of my mouth. I forced it down along with the bitter taste of humiliation. No tears fell, but inside, I was numb. I realized that the son I had spent my whole life protecting had just pushed me into the dark. He hadn't just taken over the house, he wanted to erase me altogether. That night, alone in the middle of the park, I understood something. The bond of blood had been severed for good. I was no longer his mother. I was no longer his mother. I was just a maid who'd outlived her usefulness in his eyes. The cold white glare from the crystal chandelier snapped me back to reality. The entire room had gone silent. The soft sounds of the string quartet had faded completely. Even the chatter from over 30 dinner tables had come to a stop. In the vast ballroom of that 5-star hotel, the only sound left was the steady, lifeless hum of the industrial air conditioner. Ashley was the one who finally broke the silence. After a brief moment of shock from seeing me suddenly step onto the stage, she quickly regained the poise of someone used to being on top. She smirked, a mocking half-smile, and leaned toward the second microphone sitting on the podium. "Oh, look everyone!" Ashley exclaimed, her voice dripping with fake excitement. "My dear mother-in-law must have a few words to bless the happy couple. Or maybe she's here to share her secret cornbread recipe with us. Fun fact, y'all, Martha makes it really well, so, home style." A few laughs broke out from the bride's side of the room. Ashley's bridesmaids covered their mouths, their shoulders shaking. I glanced down at the tables. Mr. Harrison, my son's father-in-law, was leaning in, whispering to the man next to him. Even from a distance, in that heavy silence, I heard him loud and clear, cold and firm. "Tell security to escort her down. Do it politely. Don't ruin the mood." Just then, Matt walked up to me. His face was flushed, not with emotion, but with shame. He looked at me with a mix of pleading and anger, a look I never imagined I'd see from the child I brought into this world. "Mom, what are you doing?" he hissed under his breath, low enough for only me to hear. "Get down. Please. Don't make a scene here." "What do you want me to do? Go hide my face in shame?" I didn't look at him. I didn't argue. My eyes scanned the room slowly. I saw Mrs. Harrison's smug grin. I saw Ashley's triumphant, condescending eyes, burning with contempt. And then, Ashley went in for the kill. She wanted to crush whatever shred of pride I had left under her expensive heels. "Actually," Ashley said into the mic, her tone suddenly changing to a syrupy fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. "We really should be understanding with Martha. I mean, she must still be bitter that her husband, a nobody construction worker, was never able to give her a fancy wedding like this. Maybe she's just feeling a little overwhelmed by the class of the Harrison family tonight." A nobody construction worker. Those words stabbed me like a red-hot blade straight to the heart. Memories of John came rushing back like a storm. My John, the man with calloused hands who always wiped away my tears so gently. John, who worked himself to the bone on dusty job sites to pay for Matt's education. John, who once stood before the statue of Christ and swore he'd never let me bow my head to anyone. Our simple but sincere love, his quiet sacrifices, now being dragged out and mocked by her in front of hundreds of strangers. That was the moment everything became clear to me. My silence over the past 6 months, my pathetic tolerance while living in that storage room, my submission when they treated me like a maid, that wasn't the virtue of a mother. That was complicity. It was my weakness that fed the monster inside these people. I had allowed them to trample over me, and now, They were trampling on the very soul of my late husband. A jolt ran down my spine. The trembling in my hands vanished completely. My back straightened, solid like cold steel. I was no longer that miserable, pitiful old Martha. Instead of walking toward the mic to explain or beg, I calmly opened the small clutch in my hand. The whole ballroom held its breath, watching my every move. I pulled out an old smartphone, its screen already scratched in several places. Matt and Ashley looked at me, puzzled. Maybe they thought I had lost my mind, or that I was going to take one last picture before security dragged me out. My thumb, rough and calloused from years of holding rags and digging in the dirt, gently slid across the screen. I tapped on the one and only speed dial icon pinned to the home screen. It had no name, just a small green sprout pushing up from the ground. Before the phone could ring a second time, the call was picked up. As if they had been holding the phone, waiting for this moment for a very long time, I turned on speaker. A calm, warm male voice echoed through the ballroom, steady and full of unshakable authority, loud enough for everyone near the stage to hear. "I'm here, Mom. Everything's ready. I'm coming in now." 3 short sentences. Direct, unmistakable. A promise made of steel. I ended the call and put the phone back into my clutch without rushing. The whole thing took 5 seconds. But for me, it felt like being reborn. I lifted my head high, my eyes cold as ice locking onto Ashley's, which were now starting to show signs of fear. I let out a small smile. And for the first time since I walked into this grand hall, I spoke. My voice wasn't shaky. It wasn't choked up. It rang out clear, sharp, and commanding. Even I was surprised. "The real party's just getting started, dear daughter-in-law." With that, I took a step back, folded my arms, and waited. The grand ballroom doors in the distance, still shut tight, were suddenly the center of everyone's attention. It was time. All the cards were on the table. My patience had hit its final limit, and now the storm was about to begin. So tell me, who do you think I called? Drop your guesses in the comments before I reveal who it was in the next chapter. The truth will blow your mind. While the room was still frozen, no one quite understanding what was happening, I stepped forward. I picked up the microphone Ashley had just used. My grip was steady, not like the way I used to hold a mop anymore. "Good evening, everyone," I began. My voice rang out through the speakers, strangely calm. "I'm Martha, the groom's mother. I'm sure many of you are wondering why a mother would do something so bizarre on her son's wedding day." I glanced at Ashley. The smile on her lips had vanished. In its place was a guarded look, her eyes narrowing, calculating. "As my daughter-in-law just mentioned," I continued, speaking slowly, "I have indeed been very obedient these past 6 months." "I did everything?" she asked. I kept my head down. I stayed quiet. I paused for a breath. For example, 3 months ago, Ashley showed great concern for my health. She said she had signed me up for a premium senior healthcare insurance package. She handed me a thick stack of papers to sign right after dinner. I looked around the room, locking eyes with the curious faces. She was so thoughtful, she even highlighted the signature spots on the last page with yellow marker. She said, "Just sign here, Mom. I already had a lawyer review the complicated medical terms for you." What a caring daughter-in-law, right? I saw Matt's face go pale. He knew exactly what I was talking about. The wine glass in his hand trembled slightly. "I'm old. My eyesight's bad from years of sewing under dim lights in the storage room. I would have signed without reading it carefully. But I have this old habit. From being poor," my voice dropped lower, sharper, "I always make a photocopy of anything I sign." Then I asked an old friend, someone who used to work as a clerk at the public defender's office, to help me read it. A deadly silence fell over the room. It turns out, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't a healthcare form at all. It was a quitclaim deed. A document in which I voluntarily transferred full ownership of my home to Ashley and Matt, effective the moment this wedding ends. A loud gasp erupted across the hall. The buzzing of whispers spread like a hive of bees. But that's not even the best part. I cut through the noise. Being kicked out and forced to live in a crummy storage room, which she thought was a fitting punishment for my poverty, turned out to be a gift. It gave me total privacy. I smiled, a cold, calculated smile. In there, I could spend hours on the phone with my lawyer friend, without anyone listening in. In there, I could use the old laptop he brought me to dig deeper into the family business of our new in-laws, Harrison Development Group. And let me tell you, it was fascinating. When people think you're just a harmless old lady, They get sloppy. Like tossing rough drafts of financial reports into the regular trash instead of using a shredder. I turned and looked straight at Mr. Harrison. He was frozen at table 1, mouth open, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. You thought I was too old to notice things? I've lived long enough in this world, my voice turned icy, cutting to the core, to know the difference between a human being and a wolf in sheep's clothing. Ashley snapped out of it. She stammered, then shrieked. What? What the hell are you talking about? You crazy old woman. Security, somebody get her out of here now. But it was already too late. The looks from everyone in the ballroom were no longer filled with pity for me. They were full of doubt, judgment, and contempt, aimed squarely at her family. Ashley screamed for security. But not a single hotel guard dared to step onto the stage. They looked at each other, hesitating. Their instincts told them this wasn't just a typical disturbance. This was a nuclear detonation in the middle of a party. No need to call, I said into the mic, my voice cutting through Ashley's hysterical shouting. Because the people I called are already on their way. I bent down and opened my clutch again. This time, I didn't pull out a phone. I pulled out a yellow paper folder. It wasn't thick, but when I dropped it on the podium, the dry, heavy thud it made sounded like a death sentence. For Mr. Harrison, I said, locking eyes with my son's father-in-law. He was trying to stay calm, but the way his hands clenched the tablecloth, turning his knuckles white, gave him away. This isn't a wedding blessing. It's a copy of the file that my friend at the IRS will officially receive and open for investigation at 8 a.m. next Monday. I flipped open the first page of the file. Even from a distance, under the spotlight, everyone could make out columns of numbers and charts marked in red ink. Lucky me, I said sarcastically, that your precious daughter insisted I take out all the trash myself, including the trash can in her home office. Americans have a saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I found a lot of treasure in there. I read the list out loud, clearly and slowly, shredded printouts of shell companies in the state of Delaware, handwritten notes about transferring funds to accounts in the Cayman Islands. And most importantly, 2 sets of accounting books, one polished version for the government, and one real version your family keeps hidden. Mr. Harrison jumped to his feet. His face turned from white to purple with rage and fear. You shut up, he roared. You lying woman! I'll sue you for slander. Right then, Matt ran up on stage. He didn't look at me like a son looks at his mother. His eyes were locked onto the yellow folder like it was a venomous snake ready to strike. You've gone insane, Matt shouted, his voice cracking in panic. What the hell are you doing? You're ruining everything. You're ruining my life. He lunged toward me, reaching out to snatch the folder and the microphone from my hands. For a split second, time stood still. I saw his hand coming at me, the same hand I used to hold when he took his first steps. The same hand I used to warm with my breath after he fell off his bike in the middle of winter. And then, I swung. A sharp, clean slap rang out. The sound echoed through the dead silent hall, louder than the mic's feedback. It wasn't a strong slap. I'm not a physically strong person, but it carried 6 months' worth of heartbreak, disappointment, and fury. Matt froze. He stopped in his tracks, one hand cupping his cheek as it slowly turned red. He stared at me, eyes wide with utter shock. He couldn't believe that I, the mother who always obeyed, who always endured, had just slapped him in front of everyone. The whole ballroom went into chaos. Chairs scraped loudly against the floor. Ashley let out a terrified scream. I looked my son straight in the eyes. My hand was still tingling from the impact. This slap isn't for you, Matt, I said, my voice shaking, but steady and full of sorrow. This slap is for the boy I raised. The boy who once promised to protect his mother, but who died a long time ago. I took a deep breath and looked him over, head to toe, with unfamiliar eyes. And you, I said, each word heavy in the air. You're just a coward standing in front of me. A stranger. Before we continue, I want to share something with you. Sometimes, a slap is the most painful yet loving lesson we can give to a child who's lost their way. Do you agree? If you do, leave a comment below. Now, let's get back to the story. Right at the height of the chaos, while Matt was still frozen, holding his cheek, a loud noise came from the back of the hall. The 2 massive oak doors of the grand ballroom burst open at once, slamming against the walls and silencing every sound. Everyone, including me, turned to look. A tall man stepped inside, He wore a charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection, not a single wrinkle. His walk radiated confidence and commanding presence. Behind him were two men in black, earpieces in place, faces cold and professional. The air seemed to get sucked out of the room. The temperature dropped a few degrees. I saw Mr. Harrison's face go pale. His anger twisted into sheer panic. His arms dropped to his sides, lips moving but no sound coming out. Mrs. Harrison's mouth hung open as her hand trembled, pointing toward the man. I caught the hushed, frightened whispers from the business tables. People who understood the real power balance in this city. Oh my God, it's Alex Stone, the real estate tycoon from Stonebridge Group. What is he doing here? I thought the Harrisons had been trying to get a meeting with him for over a year with no luck. Ashley's family knew exactly who Alex Stone was. They had bragged that this wedding would attract high-profile guests, but they never dared to dream that the one man they couldn't even reach would show up here, in the flesh. Alex Stone didn't look at anyone. He ignored Mr. Harrison's rushed, nervous bow. He didn't look at Matt, who stood frozen. He didn't glance at the crowd. His eyes were fixed on one person only. Me. He strode down the center aisle, fast and firm. His leather shoes echoed against the floor with steady, powerful steps. He walked straight up to the stage and stopped right in front of me. And then, in front of hundreds of stunned eyes, the powerful man everyone in this city respected gently took my hand, the same rough hand that had just slapped his own son. He bowed his head, deeply, respectfully, and placed his forehead on the back of my hand. "I'm sorry, Mom." Alex's voice was deep and warm, ringing clearly through the microphone I was still holding. "I'm sorry. I got here late. I'm sorry you had to go through all of this." The word "Mom" hit the crowd like a lightning strike. Matt stumbled back a step, his face drained of all color. He looked at me, then at Alex, then back at me. Confusion, fear, and overwhelming jealousy were written all over his face. Alex slowly straightened up. He let go of my hand but continued to stand in front of me like a shield. He took the microphone from my hand. Alex turned to the crowd. The warmth he had just shown me vanished, replaced by an icy seriousness. "Let me introduce myself," he said, his voice calm but commanding, filling every corner of the room. "The woman you just heard the bride call a maid, the woman the Harrison family just insulted, is my mother, Mrs. Martha." He paused, letting the statement settle in everyone's minds. "Anyone who disrespects her," Alex continued, voice sharp as steel, his eyes locking onto Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, "is declaring war on me and the entire Stonebridge Corporation." The room fell silent. You could hear a pin drop. Alex turned to look at Matt. His expression wasn't angry, just the profound disappointment of a man looking at a boy who never grew up. 35 years ago, Alex began, his voice low and somber, when I was a scrawny, scared kid abandoned at St. Jude's orphanage. The only person who came to visit me every weekend was this woman. She wasn't rich, she worked 2 jobs, but she always brought me old books and taught me how to read. Alex placed his hand on my shoulder, giving it a gentle, respectful squeeze. "When no one believed in me, she did. When the world treated me like trash, she told me I could be anything. She couldn't adopt me because of legal barriers, but she raised my spirit. Her love is what turned a boy with nothing into the man standing here today, Alex Stone." He turned back toward Matt and Ashley, his tone now razor sharp. "So let me make this clear. Matt may be the son she gave birth to, but I'm the son who will protect her." With that, Alex set the microphone down with a firm click. He turned to the security team, then back at the Harrison family, who were visibly trembling. "The show's over." Alex's words hung heavy in the air, like a death sentence. The Harrisons were frozen in place. Mr. Harrison, the man who had been boasting just moments earlier about his business empire, now looked like a deflated balloon. He knew better than anyone the weight of Alex Stone's words. Stonebridge wasn't just a partner, it was the lifeline for Harrison's entire subcontracting empire. He rushed toward the stage, forcing a twisted, miserable smile. "Mr. Stone, Sir Stone," his voice trembled. There must be some misunderstanding here. Our Ashley is still young and immature. She just went a little too far with a joke. We have the utmost respect for Mrs. Martha." Alex didn't even glance at him. He turned to his closest assistant and gave a signal. The assistant nodded, pulled out his phone, and started dialing immediately. "Notify the board," Alex said loudly, making sure the entire room could hear. Cancel Tuesday's meeting. Stonebridge is withdrawing all investment offers for Harrison Development's Westgate Mall project. Effective immediately. Mr. 1. Harrison staggered, grabbing the edge of the table to keep himself upright. The Westgate project was the only lifeline left for his debt-ridden company. And, Alex continued, his voice icy and ruthless, tell the legal department to review all previous contracts for construction materials. I suspect fraud in the steel quality. If there's any wrongdoing, we'll file a lawsuit. Each word Alex spoke was like a nail sealing the coffin of the Harrison family's business. Mrs. Harrison let out a cry of anguish. She no longer cared about her social composure. She turned to her daughter, face flushed red, and hissed furiously, "Ashley, you idiot! Look at what you've done! I told you to watch your damn mouth. You just destroyed this entire family." Ashley, now the target of her own parents' disgust and the mocking stares of the guests, burst into sobs. Her tears smeared the expensive mascara, black streaks running down her pretty face. She pointed at Matt in panic. "It's his fault. He's weak. It's his mother's fault. It's that pathetic, low-class family of his." And then, Matt acted. He didn't defend me. He didn't stand up for my dignity. He did something that filled me with more disgust than anger. He lunged forward, dropped to his knees on the cold marble floor, right at my feet. He crawled over, grabbing desperately at the hem of my dress, crying with snot and tears running down his face. "Mom! Mom! I'm sorry!" he wailed. "I was wrong. She blinded me. She made me do it. Please, Mom, forgive me. Say something to Alex, please. I'm your son. You're really going to let me die like this?" I looked down at the top of the man's head kneeling at my feet. I searched myself for any feeling. Pity? No. Anger? Not even that. Just an endless void. This coward, this man willing to throw his wife under the bus just to save himself when things got tough, he was a complete stranger to me. The little boy I once raised would never have acted like this. I gently pulled my leg away from his hand. I took a step back, putting a distance between us that could never be closed again. I didn't say a single word to Matt. My silence was the clearest, most brutal answer I could give. Alex placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice soft. "Let's go home, Mom. The car's waiting outside." He helped me down from the stage. The crowd instinctively parted, forming a wide path for us. No one dared to look me in the eye. They lowered their heads, full of hesitation and fear. As we passed by the Harrisons' table, I heard them arguing, blaming each other for the avalanche of debt about to hit. When we passed Matt, he was still kneeling there, his face buried in the floor, crying silently, alone and pathetic. The hotel doors opened. The cool, fresh night air filled my lungs. For the first time in 6 months, I took a deep breath and actually felt alive. I stepped into the sleek black Rolls-Royce, leaving behind a shattered wedding, a mess of greed, stupidity, and too late tears. A year later, after everything, my life had slowly settled. Every day, I soaked in the morning sun as it filtered through the old oak trees, dancing across the back porch. I sat on my wooden swing, hands wrapped around a warm cup of honey chamomile tea. The house had changed. The cold gray paint Ashley once chose was now replaced with a soft sage green, a color John and I both loved. The rose garden, neglected for years and once on the verge of being torn out, was now blooming wildly again, filling the breeze with its sweet scent. There were no more yellow sticky notes barking orders, no more fake air freshener smell. Now, the kitchen always carried the gentle scent of baked goods and simmering soup. This was my home again, whole and peaceful. Every Wednesday afternoon, I gathered with a few old friends from the neighborhood in the living room for knitting club. The house filled with laughter and conversation. On Fridays, Alex would come pick me up. We'd go together to St. Jude's orphanage, where he'd helped fund the renovation of the library and play area. I'd read books to the kids. Seeing their bright, innocent smiles brought healing to my heart, something I thought I'd lost forever. Sometimes, Alex would show me little blurbs from the financial news. Harrison Development had officially filed for bankruptcy after a large-scale IRS investigation into tax fraud. Mr. Harrison faced probation and hefty fines. Ashley, the once proud daughter-in-law, had finalized her divorce from Matt. Because of shared debt laws, she walked away with almost nothing. I heard she had to move to the suburbs, staying with a distant relative and working as a cosmetics saleswoman. As for Matt, now and then, in the late afternoons, I'd still see his beat-up old car parked across the street. right across from the front gate. He didn't ring the doorbell. He didn't dare come in. He just sat in the car, window rolled down, staring at the house, at the rose garden where I'd be sitting. Through the glass, I could see how thin he'd gotten. His face was rough with unshaved stubble, his clothes wrinkled. He looked 10 years older, tired and utterly alone. The way he looked at me, there was so much regret in his eyes, and a longing to return to the days when his mother still made soup and waited for him to come home. I didn't open the door. I didn't call the cops to make him leave either. Alex once asked me, "Do you still hate him, Mom?" I shook my head and smiled gently. Hatred is a prison, and I've already walked out of it. Holding on to hate is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. I believe that someday in the future, maybe 3 years from now, maybe 5, when Matt truly learns to stand on his own 2 feet, when he takes responsibility for his mistakes instead of blaming everyone else, when he becomes a real man instead of just a grown-up child. On that day, I'll open the door. But my forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. The wound may heal, but the scar will always be there to remind me of my worth. I took a sip of tea, tasting the sweetness spread across my tongue. I've learned a costly lesson in the later years of my life. Never be afraid of loneliness. Be afraid of living next to people who make you feel lonely in your own home. Now, I'm not lonely at all. I'm enjoying the beautiful freedom I've earned. Autumn in America always carries a quiet sadness, but this year, to me, it's bursting with color. It's been 5 years since that day. Now, I'm standing in a big room filled with sunlight and the smell of butter. This isn't the cramped kitchen at Denny's from back in the day, nor is it the cold storage room my ex-daughter-in-law once shoved me into. This is Martha's Community Kitchen, a non-profit project Alex and I built together. Today is Thanksgiving. Outside, the cold wind has started blowing, chasing fiery red maple leaves along the sidewalk. But inside, it's warm and bustling. "Mrs. Martha, your book sold out again." Jessica, the young assistant, rushed in holding a hardcover book. On the cover is a picture of me, smiling brightly, holding a tray of golden cornbread. The title is simple but says everything about my life. The Taste of Dignity. I smiled, adjusted my denim apron, not the old tattered one from before, but a brand new one embroidered with my name. "Don't worry, there are still a few boxes in the back. Go grab them." Who would have thought? The cheap, country recipes Ashley once tossed in the trash have now become a local bestseller. The book isn't just about cooking. It tells the story of how a woman found herself again through her kitchen. The profits go to keep this place running, where we serve hot meals to the homeless and struggling single moms. I look down at my hands. The calluses are still there, and the age spots have multiplied. But I don't see them as ugly anymore. I wear a simple gold ring on my ring finger, a gift I gave myself for my 60th birthday. "Mom." Alex's warm voice came from behind me. I turned around. Alex Stone, one of the most powerful men in real estate, wasn't wearing a suit today. He had on a cream-colored turtleneck, sleeves rolled up, carrying a massive tray of roast turkey, helping out just like everyone else. "I think you should go to the front door for a bit," Alex said, lowering his voice, a hint of hesitation in his eyes. "There's a special guest. He won't come inside, he just wants to buy a book." My heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was. I took off my apron, smoothed back my short, salt and pepper hair, and walked to the front door. The autumn wind hit my face, sharp and cold. By the street lamp, a man was standing there, huddled in a puffer jacket with worn-out shoulders. It was Matt. 5 years had passed. If I had seen him on the street, I probably wouldn't have recognized him. The once well-fed, polished Matt was now thin and sun-darkened. He wore a faded baseball cap, jeans stained with dust and plaster, and big construction boots. By the curb sat an old, rusted Ford pickup truck, its bed piled with construction tools, shovels, trowels, and sacks of cement. He was a construction worker now. The same job his father had done all his life. The job he once mocked as lowly at his wedding. When he saw me come out, Matt fumbled awkwardly. He quickly stuffed his cracked, paint-smeared hands into his jacket pockets. He couldn't bring himself to look me in the eye. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice hoarse, like sandpaper scraping wood. I stood still on the steps, keeping a measured distance. I didn't feel hatred. I didn't feel that old urge to rush up and hug him like before. I just felt this strange sense of calm. "Hello, son," I replied. "Alex said you wanted to buy a book?" Matt nodded, uneasy. He pulled a 20 and a $5 bill from his jeans pocket. They were smoothed out, but still dusted with cement. I was passing by after work, he stammered. I heard people say your books are really good. I wanted to buy one, to read, and to support the kitchen. He held out the money. His hand trembled. I looked at that hand. The same hand that once clapped to mock me, the same hand that took my money to buy my absence, now rough and callous just like my husband John's hands used to be. Life really is a circle of karma, and also a forge. Ashley left him the moment he had nothing. No fancy house, no mother's shelter. Matt had to learn how to stand on his own. He had to bend down and do the work he once looked down on, just to scrape together a few bucks. I stepped down one step and took the money from his hand. I didn't give it to him for free. This was the respect I owed to his labor. Wait here a minute, I said. I walked back inside and picked up a brand new book. I took a pen, opened to the first page. I thought for a moment, then wrote, to Matt. May you find the sweetness of hard work in every meal. Mom, Martha. I turned and handed him the book. Matt took it with both hands, like he was holding something fragile and precious. He looked at the words I'd written inside, and his thin shoulders started to shake. He pressed his lips together to keep the sobs in, but tears spilled down his hollow cheeks, streaking the dirt on his face. I'm sorry, he whispered, so quietly it was almost carried away by the wind. Dad was right. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask to come back. He knew he hadn't earned that right, or maybe he was finally grown enough to understand that some cracks can't be mended with just an apology. I looked at him, my gaze softening. Go home, Matt. It's getting late. Drive safe. He nodded, wiped his tears with a dirty sleeve, and turned toward the beat-up old pickup truck. His figure looked lonely as he walked away, but steadier than the spoiled young man in a tuxedo I remembered from years ago. As the engine sputtered to life and the truck disappeared around the corner, Alex stepped up beside me. You okay, Mom? He asked, gently draping a sweater over my shoulders. I'm okay, Alex, I smiled, taking a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The boy finally became a man. A little late, but I'm sure John up there can rest easy now. We walked back inside. The sounds of laughter, clinking dishes, and strangers becoming family around the warm dinner table welcomed us again. I once lost a house, but I built a bigger home. I once lost a son, but I found myself. And I realized, happiness doesn't come from blind sacrifice. Happiness is having the strength to love yourself, the courage to say no to disrespect, and the grace to recognize growth rising from the ashes. My journey ends here, but your stories are still being written every day. To all the parents out there, please don't give up your whole life in the name of sacrifice. Learn to love yourself. Always keep a strong financial safety net. When old age arrives, money isn't just a way to survive, it's the anchor that protects our dignity. And to those who are children, remember, filial piety is the root of all blessings. The way you treat your parents today will be the mirror that reflects what your own children give back to you tomorrow. Karma might take its time, but it never misses. Thank you for walking through these ups and downs with me. I hope each of us finds peace and dignity in our own home. The story you just heard has been altered in name and location to protect the identities of those involved. We don't share these tales to judge, but in the hope that someone out there will stop and reflect, how many mothers are silently suffering in their own homes right now? I truly wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you dare to speak up and reclaim your voice? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story, or any feedback to help us improve our content. God always blesses the brave, and I believe courage will lead us to better days. On the end screen, I'll leave you with two of the most beloved stories on our channel. I think you'll be surprised. Thank you for staying with me all the way to this moment. If this story touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next.